Spinoffs are risky. For every Better Call Saul that nails it, there are plenty that crash and burn. And in animation, no show illustrates this better than The Cleveland Show. It was the mid-2000s. Family Guy had just clawed its way back from cancellation and was bigger than ever. American Dad was finding its own identity. Seth MacFarlane had basically become Fox's golden goose, and Sunday nights were dominated by his brand of weird, offensive, and sometimes surprisingly heartfelt comedy. Naturally, Fox wanted more, and what they got was The Cleveland Show. On paper, it seemed like a win-win. Take one of Family Guy's most likable background characters, give him a fresh setting, and expand McFarlane's animated empire. But just 4 years later, it was gone. The show was cancelled, leaving behind a legacy that feels more like a curiosity than a success. So what exactly happened? Let's break down the tragic rise and fall of The Cleveland Show. The idea for The Cleveland Show didn't come out of nowhere. Fox was determined to cement its animation domination, and what better way than to build a spin-off around one of the Seth MacFarlane's established characters. Cleveland was chosen because, at the time, he was one of Peter Griffin's longest-running friends. He had been around since the early days of Family Guy, first appearing in the series premiere, Death Has a Shadow, that aired on January 31st, 1999. He was then introduced in the episode Mind Over Murders as Peter's mild-mannered neighbor. When it came to the show's friend group, Peter was impulsive and reckless, Quagmire was a pervert, and Joe was straight up insane. However, Cleveland was the soft-spoken guy, the calm foil in Peter's friend group, the voice of reason surrounded by chaos. He was a fan-favorite side character, always the reluctant participant in Peter's insane schemes. By 2007, talks about a full spin-off were on the table. McFarlane teamed up with Mike Henry, who voiced Cleveland, to create a new setting, Stool Bend, a fictional town in Virginia. The series would revolve around Cleveland Brown, his new wife Donna Tubbs Brown, and their blended family. The pilot episode named Pilot that aired on September 27th, 2009, set the stage for Cleveland's new life. After Peter literally destroys Cleveland's house yet again, Cleveland and his son, Cleveland Jr., pack up and leave Quahog. They head west toward California, where Cleveland hopes to become a minor league baseball scout. On the way, they stop in Cleveland's hometown of Stool Bend, Virginia, where he reconnects with his high school crush, Donna Tubbs. She invites him to stay, revealing she recently split from her ex-husband and needs a father figure. Cleveland meets her kids, Rallo and Roberta, and the neighbors, including a talking bear named Tim.
I'm your bear now.
By the end of the episode, he decides to settle down in Stool Bend, joining this new family and starting a new chapter that would define the series. Fox promoted it heavily, slotting it right after The Simpsons on Sunday nights, prime real estate. At first, things didn't look so bad. The premiere episode pulled in nearly 9 million views, a strong start fueled largely by the Family Guy's loyal audience. And the critics were mixed, but not brutal. IGN gave the pilot an 8.3 out of 10, praising it by saying there's a lot to like here, despite missing some of Family Guy's over-the-top edge. Entertainment Weekly called it sweeter than the Family Guy and was a lot more endearing than American Dad. On the other side, the AV Club wasn't impressed, giving it a C-, saying the show hadn't fully differentiated itself from its parent. Metacritic has the show sitting at a 55 out of 100, squarely in the mixed or average range. The viewers were somewhat divided. Some liked it, while others really resented it because it had replaced another beloved show named King of the Hills. So yeah, The Cleveland Show wasn't a runaway critical darling, but it wasn't written off immediately either. For Fox, the numbers mattered most, and at last in season 1, the numbers were decent. In fact, the show even snagged a Primetime Emmy nomination in 2011 for the episode Merry Christmas, a small nod that Fox hoped would validate the spinoff. At this point, it seemed like The Cleveland Show might actually carve out its own little corner in animation, but the cautious optimism did not last long. The first issue was simple. Cleveland, as a character, just didn't have the personality to lead a show. He was always the level-headed man surrounded by Peter, Quagmire, and Joe's craziness. That dynamic worked in Family Guy, but take him out of Quahog, drop him into Stool Bend, and suddenly there's no chaos for him to bounce off of. Then there was the rest of the cast. Cleveland Jr., Donna, Rallo, and Roberta, they were supposed to be the next Family Guy family hits. But unfortunately, Unfortunately, there were notable struggles in making them resonate with audiences. Cleveland Jr., for instance, was portrayed as a more withdrawn and depressed teenager dealing with his parents' divorce and loss, making it difficult for viewers to connect or find him engaging. Unlike his early Family Guy persona, which was more lively, this version often seemed disengaged and struggled to stand out. Rallo was meant to be a mini Stewie, but ended up as a gangster wannabe without charm. Roberta, the teenage daughter, got little character depth and mostly served as a punching bag for jokes. Donna, essentially a black Lois, lacked the balance and personality that made Lois relatable. And then there's Tim the Bear. Because every Seth MacFarlane show apparently needs a talking non-human, right? Tim was meant to be Cleveland's anti-Quagmire, conservative, cautious, the foil to Cleveland's calm personality. Instead, he was just there. By the second season, the cracks were showing. The humor wasn't clever anymore, and the show relied on weak gags, predictable jokes, and slapstick rather than clever satire. And the numbers told the story. The very first episode of The Cleveland Show had nearly 9 million viewers. That's a huge opening. But by the time season 3 rolled around, that number had dropped to around 4 or 5 million. That's nearly half the audience gone in just a couple of years. Fox was not impressed. They'd given Cleveland prime real estate on Sunday nights, hoping it could become their next big animated hit. Instead, it was bleeding viewers.
Stupid. It looked like a big purple penis and your ratings blew.
We did about the same as Bob's Burgers.
That's your bar? Oh, shame on you.
Critics did not hold back either. Rotten Tomatoes gave season 1 just 44% approval, which basically means less than half of critics thought it was even decent. Later seasons didn't improve much either. The scores hovered in the same mediocre range. Over on Metacritic, the show stayed stuck in the dreaded mixed review zone. And fans weren't buying it either. By season 4, the show was a shadow of what Fox had hoped. Cleveland, the character, was still fine, likable, and gentle, but the plots, gags, and family dynamics were stale. Recycled jokes, awkwardly timed cutaways, and weak satire made it impossible to compete with its older siblings, Family Guy and American Dad. Then there was the identity problem. The Cleveland Show never really figured out what it wanted to be. Was it a family sitcom, a wacky parody, or just a generic animated show with cutaway jokes? Instead of finding its own voice, it felt like a watered-down version of Seth MacFarlane's other projects.
What was supposed to be the show's audience? Who did you make it for? Like some black guy who's never met another black guy?
Anything else?
Yeah, here's 4 seasons worth of DVDs of what we've been up to. You know, just so you back up to speed. And I'll warn you ahead of time, these have jokes in them.
And that's why the hype collapsed so fast. The audience that tuned in at the start faded away, the reviews got worse, and by the time season 4 aired, the writing was on the wall. After 88 episodes, The Cleveland Show quietly bowed out in 2013. Unlike Family Guy, it never had the cult following to save it. Cleveland returned to Quahog, slipping back into Family Guy as his solo adventure never happened. The Emmy nomination for Merry Christmas remained the only official recognition, a reminder of potential that never fully materialized.
Oh my God, who the hell cares?
Not quite a disaster, but a reminder that spin-offs are risky, charm can't be faked, and sometimes the supporting character belongs exactly where they started. Want to see more of these breakdowns? Keep watching the regular recap. Subscribe.